Welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Marco Forgione to today's episode. Marco, welcome to the podcast. And before we get started, if I could ask you to introduce yourself and say a little bit about the Institute as well, please.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashley. And I want to start first by congratulating you on the podcast. This is a really important and timely discussion topic for businesses. It creates both challenges, but also tremendous opportunities. And it's deeply relevant to the Chartered Institute. We are an independent, not-for-profit organization. We were established in 1935 by the leading industrialists of the day, who came together to address the societal and economic challenges of the interwar years. We are a professional institute. We have a body of members, both individuals and businesses. We exist with the mission, the objective of enhancing, supporting, professionalizing, encouraging and nurturing cross-border trade. And that means both providing insight to policymakers and regulators, but also directly to businesses to ensure that we create an environment that supports cross-border trade. And it's really important that that is the case, because research shows and evidence proves businesses which trade cross borders, businesses that trade internationally, are more sustainable, more resilient, they employ more people, they're more innovative, and they're more profitable. So it's incumbent upon the Chartered Institute that we have the knowledge and expertise to help businesses navigate a changing world of international trade, that we understand the impact of technology and new systems and processes, and that we provide expertise to support policymakers and regulators and parliamentarians and officials within government and multinational organizations to understand the implications of international trade, the implications of changing regulations, and the impact of new technologies, which is why today's conversation is so important.
Marco, thank you for that introduction. Let me begin by asking, how is AI being used strategically in international trade?
Well, international trade, unfortunately, isn't at the very forefront of adopting new technologies. The reality is, in international trade, we are still dependent on bits of paper and regulations that go back to the 16th century. So, there's a huge amount that needs to be done in international trade, both to catch up, but also to adapt to a whole new way of approaching international trade, which is highly regulated and dependent, as I've said, on some fairly archaic systems and processes. But within that context, international trade, which is the whole of the global supply chain and logistics, as well as the administration of regulatory requirements, is beginning to adapt to a new system, a new processes, both digitalization of trade and also the deployment and implementation of AI. And there are a number of really key leaders who are at the forefront of this transition and the adaptation and adoption of AI. Companies like Maersk, who are using AI and their own internal digital systems to really optimize the trade routes, their supply chain, their packing systems and processes, and are already seeing massive improvements both in the efficiency of their shipping processes, the reduction in fuel use, and enhancements and improvements to the whole flow of goods. And you have to understand that with the highly integrated global supply chain, goods move rapidly between country to country, business to business. So the efficiencies that AI provides are beginning to have a huge impact for Maersk, positive impact for Maersk, by reducing costs, increasing efficiency, increasing their impact, increasing the reduction of their net zero ambitions, whilst improving capacity. So that's just one small area with their predictive logistics that Maersk is using. There are other much more practical areas. There's a tool being used in sub-Saharan Africa to support agriculture, and this tool provides personalized advice to farmers, enabling them to increase productivity and production. So AI across global supply chains, the global manufacturing is beginning to really have quite an impact.
These are fascinating examples, and you can begin to see that particularly the bigger organizations being able to adopt these. What challenges have you come across? What challenges are they saying they face when they're trying to implement these systems?
Well, I think there are a number of issues. First is, of course, knowledge and skills.
Hmm.
Second is the upfront cost. And then third is having to change the way in which you work. The reality is, if you're going to really maximize the benefit of AI, it's not just something that sits within existing systems or processes. It enables you to reform, restructure your process to improve and enhance your impact. Then there's really practical opportunities. For instance, there's the deployment of an auto translate AI that eBay uses between the USA and South America, which is increased. I think the trade figures for the increase of trade between US and South America is something like 37%, because of the auto translate and recognition of the cultural nuances of selling goods between the USA and South America. So the challenges are understanding how this impacts on business processes. And if you're an MSME, that's not insignificant. There is the costs of deployment. And we're seeing very clearly that there's a bifurcation taking place. Over 60% of larger businesses involved in international trade are adopting and implementing AI, as opposed to about 30 to 33%, so about a third of MSMEs, that's micro, small, and medium enterprises. So there's a lag that has got to be filled around knowledge, skills, operational transformation, and then the cost. The reality is that this takes both cost up front, the deployment of new tools, and also the time taken to really understand. So taking people out of what they're doing today so that they become upskilled in the utilization of AI and technological tools in the future. But it's important that we do fill that gap and that we do enable MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, to seize these opportunities. Because in the UK alone, 99.9% of all businesses are MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. So if we could get those businesses, those MSMEs, to increase their productivity by just 1%, that is billions into the UK economy and hundreds of thousands of people into employment. So that skills and knowledge gap over use of AI is a huge societal and economic challenge, but one that, if grappled with and solved, would be transformative for the UK economy.
You can understand why those MSMEs struggle because, in the current economic environment, many of them are just about managing to keep afloat and keep their business going. Um, how do we get these MSMEs on this AI journey? What sorts of things should these organizations be considering and looking at?
There's skills and the great work that this podcast is doing, evangelizing for the benefits of AI and digitalization within businesses, is important. I think there needs to be a real focus from government, from policymakers, to evangelize and provide support for businesses to implement AI. And look, the reality is, for a lot of people, you talk about AI and they kind of defer back to ChatGPT or the large language models. I mean, these tools are so powerful and so multifaceted that we we have to directly engage with businesses and business leaders and the next generation of business leaders so that they see AI just as a natural part of a business system and a business process. Look, Alibaba deploys an AI tool that actively monitors trends. It reviews images, search terms, and sales data on its platform, and then provides that information to businesses so that you can respond and seize market opportunity from the use of this tool.
Yeah.
So, there are opportunities existing where MSMEs get the benefit of AI without necessarily having to directly embed it. But the business has to engage with organizations like Alibaba, eBay, Google, who have these market AI tools, and then embed the information within their systems and processes. We chaired the e-commerce trade commission, a 2-year industry-led trade commission with the UK government. The piece of research that was done by the Social Market Foundation on behalf of that group identified that even 2 years ago, something like 40% of UK businesses, particularly MSMEs, recognized that AI was going to have a massive transformative effect on trade. But the vast majority of those didn't really know what it meant for them, or indeed how they could get involved and understand the implications. So there's an awful lot of work that needs to be done, actually.
I agree, Marco. And you can begin to see how, as the technology improves and becomes even more sophisticated, AI is going to be systemic in international trade. You mentioned some of the work that Maersk is doing in this area, but you can begin to see that beyond the shipping part, with the advent of autonomous vehicles, that area is also becoming a major part of the supply chain and the changes in the supply chain. How do you see some of those developments rolling out in terms of how organizations will be operating going forward?
Yeah, no, you're quite right, and I think the biggest, most significant adoption of autonomous vehicles is in the port and logistics infrastructure sector. We're already looking with Maersk and others at autonomous ships. I've identified the AI tools that Maersk is using to optimize its shipping processes, taking data like sea conditions to help plot routes that are more efficient, more effective, and avoid potential delays. Taking on board port capacity so that you ship to the most efficient ports in the world. There's an annual report on port digitalization and the automation in ports. And I'm afraid to say that the Europe and the US is lagging China by multiples. And the efficiencies that are driven by, auto AI enabled machine learning cranes to load and unload the shipping, the autonomous vehicles taking the containers from the dockside to the warehousing, the AI enabled machine learning operation of the warehousing to maximize efficiency and to reduce delay in the transportation, the use of robots throughout the system of the logistics sector is key. And that is in the context, Ashley, of a world where we are moving from the highly integrated, highly efficient global supply chains that have grown up since the 1980s to ones where we are having to accept an anti-fragile approach, which is potentially pushing up costs, but that cost can be mitigated by maximizing efficiency of the supply chain. So there's going to be greater demand for warehousing, so that the just-in-time efficiency of the manufacturing process isn't lost, but you're not dependent on goods having to constantly ship from around the world and arrive at the factory just in time. That we will build a warehousing capacity, but that's costly unless there's the investment in automation and AI, which is what we're beginning to see. The reality is that transformation is taking place, and AI is core and central to that, because the ability to analyze and ingest huge amounts of data to enable the decisions on stockage and trade routes is foundational to this new world that is emerging for global international trade.
So we're talking about a world, Marco, that we're going into where you can almost begin to see fully autonomous supply chains coming in. Where are we on that? Where are we on that trajectory? Are we still at the early stages from your perspective?
So we are both from business and from government, and I think that the Europe, in the broader sense, so landmass Europe is lagging. We're lagging the US, and we're particularly lagging Asia and China, because we don't have the hyperscaled tech companies that exist, particularly in China and the US. So I think that there's a challenge that we face, the UK and Europe face. Our government systems and processes are dispersed, they are not integrated. So single customs processes are still highly manual and duplicative, whereas in some other areas they are highly streamlined. We ran a pilot project for UK government on a digital trade corridor connecting Kenya to the United Kingdom for the transportation of tea, coffee, and cut flowers, and the system integrated seamlessly into the Kenya single trade window. So a tell me once portal for all the trade data and customs information that is required. So it was input into the system once, integrated into the Kenya single trade window once. All the data then went to the various government organizations and bodies who need the information to enable the shipment to leave Kenya. When it got to the UK, we don't have a single trade window. It then became very manual. You had to tell Border Force, the port authorities, the HMRC, all the data in order for the trade to flow. However, despite even that manual input on the UK side, the report by Cabinet Office showed that the speed of the transit of those goods from Kenya to the UK increased by about 30 to 40%, and profitability increased dramatically as well. And that's profit that was flowing back through the supply chain, right back to the farmers and the growers in the mountains in Kenya. So there's huge economic efficiency and economic benefit that can be garnered by having an integrated digital AI-enabled machine learning system for customs. Unfortunately, actually, we are a long way from that in the UK. The EU is looking at how they can achieve that, but they too are far behind some of the most efficient, most effective nations with regards to the implementation of digital systems for customs as well as for international trade.
Clearly an area of major development that's needed there. Okay, I'd like to move the conversation on a little bit, because whenever we talk about international trade, invariably the images that come into people's minds are these massive container ships with these containers piled, 15, 20 stories high, making their way across the world. But really, there's a significant amount of work that's done in the services sector to support the international trade. I'm thinking about the lawyers that you talked about, HMRC, that the accountants, the people that support the international trade to make it happen. How do you see AI affecting the provision of professional services?
So just as I've highlighted, there's been a lag within trading goods. that we've seen with the adoption of AI, machine learning, and digital tools. Actually, it's in the services sector where it's moving much more quickly. And the UK economy, 80% of it is trade in services. We are the second largest exporter of services in the world. We've signed free trade agreement like the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Southeast Asia, South America trading bloc, where the biggest benefits are for trade in services. And of course, the Prime Minister is currently in India, where with the free trade agreement, UK services businesses have greater access into the Indian market. And what's important there is the elements around digital rules and regulations, because in the legal profession, in the professional services sector, AI adoption is moving forward at a great pace. And we're seeing now the deployment of AI tools within the legal sector, which enables a much quicker, much faster assessment of the legal tools and contract law, which means that the winners in this marketplace are those who are going to deploy those tools faster than anyone else. In fact, I was at a lunch recently with one of the city's leading law firms. They are actively investing now and growing their AI capability, not just to support their legal professionals, but actually to support the direct engagement with research and the deployment of advice. If you look at in the funding in the city, the financial sector, there are any number now of AI-enabled investment tools to support consumers that are coming to the marketplace. So the whole world of the trade and services sector is being disrupted and transformed by AI.
You're absolutely right. And clearly one of the big concerns is that the way in which AI is being deployed, particularly in the professional services organizations, is it's taking out first tier entry level jobs. How do you see that playing out potentially in some of the provision of those professional services?
Actually, the world of history, or the history of the world, is littered with stories of doom with regards to employment because of technological innovation. When email first came, I'm sufficiently old. I remember the email coming to the office, and there was a view that it was going to do away with paper and it was going to do away with systems and processes, and people would lose their job. Well, I don't know about your office, but the amount of paper used seems to be increasing, not decreasing. And certainly we've not seen a massive drop off in employment. I think what's happening is the way in which people's time and effort is deployed is shifting and changing. The skill sets that are needed are shifting and changing. And AI, even agentic AI, are tools that can be deployed to support the knowledge and expertise of individuals. And there are certain skills and certain attributes that I think will still be highly valued, and that will require people to still be involved. We can't predict where AI is going to take us.
Yeah.
It's impossible to really know what the future looks like, but certainly everything I've seen so far proves to me that there remain tremendous opportunities for people to build their careers.
One of our big export industries is the creative sector, and there's a huge amount of concern in that sector about how AI is being deployed. Most recently, there was a film made where the main character was an AI character, and all of the movements that this character was based on taking real life actors and films that were made, and then using those films to train this particular AI actor. How do you see that sector being impacted going forward?
Yeah, and look, it's challenging. We are at the forefront of the emergence of not just a new technology, not new technology, a new style of technology that hasn't been seen before. So there are going to be areas around IP and the personal IP of creative,
Mm.
whether that's actors or musicians, and we're seeing the struggle that exists with legal challenges around not just film but music and art. So I don't have an answer to that actually, because we are in an emerging environment and regulators both here and in the multinational organizations I think are really challenged to try and find what the a common route forward can and should look like. But certainly, almost every week, whichever AI bot you're using, they are updated with new iterations, enhancements on a weekly basis. The pace of development and change is immense, and I think that the problem with that, of course, is that regulators necessarily work at what is in reality a glacial pace compared to the development that's taking place in AI.
I guess that takes me naturally to the issue around government policy. I mean, what, from your perspective, should the government be doing in terms of policies that will enhance and international trade in order to reach those productivity and growth targets and aspirations that the government have?
There are two schools of thought here. One is a liberalization, and to create some simple guardrails and then let commerce and the AI develop within those broad guardrails. And the alternative is very strict control and regulation. And now the reality of that is it will curtail and it will dampen and it will prevent. And the approach that the EU is taking is to try and create a blanket of control over AI. But we live in a global multipolar world, and that's a very different approach to the one being undertaken, particularly in the US, with the results I've highlighted already. You look at the huge amount of the leaders in this sector, and they are US based or they're coming from China. So I think that the UK and the EU have to come together and think of ourselves as a single market. We have to create the spark. We have to provide the fuel for there to be European based challengers to the US and Asia. Because if we don't, the reality is we will fall behind.
Yeah.
That is the certainty, which is why the trade mission to India is so important. I think India has recognised that they have challenges and they want to now try and leapfrog forward. That gives an opportunity for the UK with India and with our partners within Europe to take a different approach.
Marco, if I could cycle back to small and medium-sized businesses, I fully agree with how important they are to the UK economy. What, from your perspective and the work that the Institute is doing with those businesses, what could be done to grow the level of AI adoption, particularly in supporting them with international trade?
Well, I think that as we've identified, there's a skills gap. There is a funding gap, and we've got to try and encourage an attitude which is much more buccaneering within our business leadership. We want to be much more entrepreneurial as businesses. But the reality is the context in which business is currently operating is really challenging. We've gone through 5 years of almost unprecedented disruption and change. We had COVID, we had the lockdown, we had the UK exiting our largest trading bloc, the EU. to become an independent trading nation, and all the complexities of that trade now between UK and EU. You've had war on mainland Europe, conflict in Middle East, global supply chain meltdowns, and a global economy which is depressed. And you've had changes in government, changes in policy, and uncertainty with regards to the UK's economic future. You've got a productivity gap, and you've got increasing taxation. Against all of that background, we're then calling on MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, to take risk, perceived risk, to invest, to grow into the future. And it's understandable that a lot of these businesses, I just feel that they are at the moment too focused on having to deal with the day to day and not necessarily able to look at what investment today could mean in the future. And we see it with international trade. We see, that there are 70,000 UK MSMEs who could and should be trading internationally, but they're not. We've seen that since Brexit, the number of MSMEs trading internationally has declined. All of that is understandable, but all of that creates a lag and prevents getting growth into the UK economy. So we've got to free that entrepreneurial spirit. So I think the government has got to work really hard at how they can free MSMEs from the challenges of rising taxes and low growth, and give them the support and encouragement to adopt AI, to adopt digital processes, and to encourage them to look internationally, because that's the only way you really grow your business. The only way you really grow your economy is by trading internationally. So I think there are a number of issues that are faced. Some of that is government collaboration with business. Some of that is freeing business and encourage that investment. There's also a clarion call for government itself to get its systems and processes in order. Like I said, Kenya has a single trade window. The UK doesn't have a single trade window. We don't have an integrated data system or data structure for saying things like customs processes, for the sharing of knowledge and expertise. And the requirements of each department is slightly different from the other. So government needs to get itself sorted with regards to the use of AI and digital tools. We need to provide a landscape that supports businesses. And then the really big win is when you get the UK government systems being interoperable with other nations' systems. So having an interoperable interstitial system and process, digital system and processes, so that you interlink seamlessly into other nations. And that way you remove friction, you increase certainty, and you reduce cost and increase profitability. The China Institute is doing that we've got a tool called Docket, which is a digital supply chain data sharing tool. And the benefits that is generating, and this is just one tool, there are many others, but the benefits that is providing for optimization of supply chain, the reduction of inefficiency and duplication within the supply chain is massive. So, the win potential is huge, but we've got to overcome the inertia of today.
Marco, thank you for joining me on the AI Adoption podcast today. We've covered a wide range of topics, everything from autonomous systems and autonomous supply chains, all the way through to what government policy needs to focus on to genuinely benefit from the opportunities that AI provides for international trade. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Ashley, it's a pleasure. Thank you.